For Wade.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I'll be quite brief in my remarks, but I'll just put on the record that I'll be supporting the Fire and Emergency Services Governance Amendment Bill 2020, and note that many of the changes that are, some of the changes in this bill come from many of the recommendations in the Kelty review that was prepared in the wake of last year's devastating bushfires that are commonly known as the Cuddly Creek fires, and I know the member for McKillop has just been at length discussing some of those issues across his electorate, and I know, sir, that through your electorate and my electorate, you know, these are significant issues that play on the minds of our communities, and one of the important recommendations, I think, in the Kelty review was indeed around the need for reporting to Parliament and tabling of reports, and I think that's actually really important that Parliament also has that opportunity to review, to scrutinise, to be involved in what I think is actually bushfire management and prevention. I think one of the really big aspects out of the Kelty review was what are we doing to prevent and reduce risk in regards to bushfires. We all know that when a fire strikes, our volunteers, especially our CFS, SES, and obviously well supported by MFS, their service in the battle to beat that fire goes above and beyond, and they do that all the time. And I think there's been a lot of discussion lately about appropriate resourcing for our CFS volunteers, and it's good to see the government is moving in that direction, and investments in automatic vehicle locations, devices. I know that's something I've talked about here and asked the Minister questions of that, and it's good to see that is slowly starting to roll out across South Australia. Other issues, of course, is ensuring that our volunteers have the best equipment. You know, rollover protection for their vehicles is so important. But really, a lot of Kelty talks about prevention before the bushfire starts, around how we do with fuel load management. And I've been heartened that in the lead up to this year's bushfire season, an increase in burning and fuel load reduction strategies in my community and across the Adelaide Hills. But also I think it's so important around reporting mechanisms, abilities for Parliament, as I said, to have a role. And I think this has been, you know, this is an issue that my predecessors have discussed here in regards to committees. I know there was the former committees looking into bushfire preparedness, chaired by the former member for Ashford, the Honourable Steph Key, by the former member for Enfield, the Honourable John Rao. So that, you know, these are issues that the Parliament has ventilated now for over a decade. So I like to commend the government for bringing forward some of these measures, and I think they will go some way in ensuring that, one, there is responsibility and information flow is so important, and people having their say. And one of the big issues, as we know, in the Cherry Gardens bushfires from last month is how the community prepares themselves to deal with the information that's before them. And of course, there's always been teething issues with the bushfire CFS apps. We know the former government had a huge amount of issues in this, and I think dropped the ball in this regard. And I think for the year of the Cuddly Creek fire, I think a lot of South Australians were left vulnerable because the CFS app wasn't working, and it was a poor rollout by the former government. I think we've seen improvements in the last year or two in the use of those apps, but holistic, long-term thinking on how we prepare our communities, especially our peri-urban communities, which are well built up right from the Member for Lights electorate across the peri-urban landscape all the way to mine, is how we move thousands of residents in the event of the need to evacuate from their homes. Where do they go? Bushfire refuges, engagement with the CFS, knowing what to do. So some of these changes, and indeed if the government is to roll out all of Kelty, I think we'll be going a long way to ensure that our communities are safer each and every bushfire season.